What's going on, everybody? This is Clint with the Die Hard MMA podcast. This podcast was filmed exclusively for odds.com. Be sure to click the link below. Check it out. We've got everything that you need over there. We've got you covered for every sport. Thank you so much for the support and good luck on all your action this week. Moving on to the next fight tonight, we've got women's flyweight Shana Dobson making her glorious return to the UFC cage, taking on UFC newcomer Casey O'Neill. And this one is super intriguing to me. Dobson is 4-4. Casey O'Neill is 5-0, undefeated. Now, Shana's been training at Team Elevation. That's a team we've been talking about for a long, long time. They are absolutely on a roll right now, and I love what they bring to the table. She's improving every single time she gets in there, and she is mean. Like, she's the type of fighter that you know is going to work for your money if you back her. She fires hard, straight punches down, right down the pipe. She's got a good front kick that she uses to control the distance, and she's very physically strong with a good gas tank. You may remember Shana Dobson pulling the biggest upset of 2020 against Maria Agapova. And the big question surrounding that is, did Maria Agapova mess up? Or is Shana Dobson that good? That's what we've got to analyze here. And it's somewhere in the middle, but my idea for this is that Maria Agapova came out and expected to walk through her opponent. She disrespected the skill set of Shana Dobson, and she gassed herself out. If she had not done that, if she had respected her opponent and taken her time in that fight, I think Maria Agapova wins that fight 8 times out of 10. So it was a mistake on Agapova's part, but it gave Dobson some shine. And here comes Casey O'Neill. She fights out of Tiger Muay Thai, which is maybe the best MMA gym on the planet. Solid boxing, good defense, good offense, nasty submission attacks. She creates awkward positions and scrambles that a lot of people just aren't going to know what to do with. Really strong hips. And she's got a nasty Kimura to armbar transition that she loves to hit and work people over with. She's got a 7-fight amateur career as well. So kind of like we talked about before, even though she's only got 5 pro fights, you got to factor in the fact that she's had a long and successful amateur career as well. James, which way are you leaning on this one, man?
This is a tough one. I'll be honest. I did interview both fighters before this one. Again, check out the playlist on the channel. I actually pin on Twitter at the top all my interviews so you guys can see, who I've spoken with. So I have some insight into both. So let's start with Shana Dobson first. I agree with you. Her going to Elevation Fight Team was a career changer, in my opinion, for her to go to a camp where it's more structured. She can work with a lot of women. Rose Namajunas is there now. She's getting some work with Rose, Montana De La Rosa, Mallory Martin, who I know had some issues last week, ended up losing that fight. She's getting to train with a lot of women as well. Claire Guthrie as well, who's from LFA. She trains there on top of that. So she's getting top-notch training. Dobson's got a lot of experience here. Obviously 8 fights in her career compared to just 5 here for Casey O'Neill. And it's not just the fact that they've been in the UFC. She's also competed on The Ultimate Fighter as well. That's a lot of experience that Casey O'Neill does not have. This does look like a spot where Dobson could potentially pull up the upset again. And I agree. Like, we don't know what happened in that last fight. Was it Agapova having an adrenaline dump? Was it a case of that, Dobson, showed her experience in that fight? We really don't know. But I do warn people in this fight, because you know what the UFC is doing here. First off, let's talk about the optics of this fight. Okay. How often do you see a fighter with just 5 fights signed to the UFC? It's very rare, right? Like, usually someone who has 5 fights, rare. They go on the Contender Series and then they get on the UFC, right? That's usually how it works. But O'Neill was outright signed. So the UFC must know something about her that, maybe we don't, or something, right? And you mentioned the gym, Tiger Muay Thai, great striking gym, although she didn't train there for this camp. I'll talk about that in a second. But you can kind of see here, Dobson's sort of, at this point in her career, been fed to prospects over and over. Agapova, before that it was Sabina Mazo, before that was Lauren Mueller, right? Like, you can see what the UFC is trying to do. They're trying to just get these prospects to make a name off Shana Dobson. But I think that she keeps hanging in there. Exactly. But I almost think that works against, some of her opponents, because, she's pissed off. I talked to her in the interview. I said, what did you think of Agapova, the lead up to the fight? She's like, it was BS. Brett Okamoto's doing an interview with Agapova. You think Shana Dobson's getting an interview before that fight? Of course not, because everyone was on Agapova in that fight. It was like boxing odds in that fight. If I remember, she was like almost like a -1,000 in that one. So I bring all that up because I do think, if you look at this on paper, if this does stay standing, I think Casey O'Neill wins this fight. But I do worry a bit just because O'Neal's never fought in the UFC. Yes, she's fought in Eternal MMA and UAE Warriors, which are two solid promotions on the regional scene. But I'm also looking at the opponents here. I mean, she's got, 2-0, 0-0, 1-1. Yes, she has a lot of amateur experience as well, but that doesn't compare to octagon time. It really doesn't. And I think that's something to just keep in mind for this fight. Now, I mentioned it there. She didn't train at Tiger Muay Thai for this camp because the pandemic's going on. So a lot of the fighters that train at that gym can't train there right now. That's why Piotr Jan's at American Top Team right now. Casey O'Neill is in Vegas. She's been in Vegas since the holidays. She actually spent the holidays in Vegas. I spoke to her again. You guys can watch the interview up there. By the way, I misspoke on my show yesterday. I said Syndicate MMA. She's actually at Extreme Couture, but you get the idea. She's in Vegas. She's getting to use the PI. She's getting to take advantage of everything there. And there's a lot of women training partners she gets to work with as well. But like you said, Clint, Tiger Muay Thai, one of the best, gyms in the sport. Her striking's got to be on point. And we've seen that, a lot of finishes, right? So kind of the way I look at this fight is this, is that if it stays standing, Casey O'Neill is going to win this fight. But I do warn people that I don't think it's a slam dunk. You've got, like we talked about, the UFC debut. We've got the experience for Dobson. We've got Dobson training at a good camp. And not only just, getting good training, but the mental side of it as well. I don't think a lot of people know this, but Elliot Marshall, who's one of the coaches there, UFC vet, he does a lot of mental visualization work with his fighters. Montana De La Rosa spoke to me about this when we did our interview, and she talked about how much it's helped her just sort of, put your mind in the right spot when you're going in there. And I know Shana is someone as well who uses that on top of that. So I'm just saying, I think we could potentially see an upset here as well. I know on paper it looks like O'Neal's going to win, and obviously the UFC does as well, but I'm going to pick O'Neal. But I'm just warning you guys, I do think there is value on Dobson here just with their experience. I think that's something you can't ignore. And it just does look like another situation where it's like, oh, she's not going to do it again, right? Because guess what, Clint? I didn't even realize this. Shana Dobson has never won back-to-back fights in her career. Can you believe that?
I mean, with only 8 fights and a 4-4 record, I kind of can believe it.
Right, but it is odd, right? How many fighters are in the UFC? I mean, I'd be willing to bet she's probably the only person on the roster who doesn't have 2 straight wins in her career. I mean, that's a crazy stat. So that's all I'm saying wild. Is maybe you feel differently, but I feel like this is one of those spots where you got to be a little bit careful because Dobson, I do think it's a bit of, that she's good, and I think people underestimate her.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. And the only problem for me is the value is a little bit gone already. So right now, we've got Casey O'Neill minus 145. Plus 125 is the other side on Shana Dobson. Dobson opened up at plus 180, and the early money came in on O'Neill. You could have got Dobson as high as plus 195. If I had gotten Dobson at plus 195, I would have smashed that spot. I absolutely would have taken the dog. But now that she is down as far as she is, I just don't know if I can pay 125 on her. I mean, first off, we talk about closing line value and getting the best of the number and all that. That's gone. That's out the window. The only side you can look at from that perspective is Casey O'Neill. Do you think she wins? Yes or no? I got a lot of questions about Casey O'Neill, and there's a lot of ways that Shana Dobson has been disappointing and a lot of ways that she lost. Submission is not one of them, James. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's really the ace up the sleeve of Casey O'Neill is her crazy grappling. And if she can't submit Shana Dobson, the wrestling and then just the sheer strength and physicality may be too much. I feel like Shana can grind her out and get her way to a 3-round decision.
Which right now, I'm looking at the odds right here. Dobson wins by decision is plus 247. Not amazing, but if you feel like Dobson's going to win, I don't think you'll see her finish Casey O'Neill. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it happens, but I think with it just being 3 rounds, O'Neill's probably watching that Agapova fight going I'm not going to overextend myself and think that I'm going to run this girl over. The odds are much closer in this fight, right? So I think if Dobson does win, I see it more likely a decision than a finish. Because typically Dobson, I know she does have some finished wins over Agapova and Ariel Beck, but in general, a lot of her fights do go the distance. So that's something I would sort of look at if you're going to bet Dobson anyways.
Yep. I like that we're kind of on the same page here, man. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm just rooting for Dobson. That's part of this is I want to see her stick it to the UFC. I want to see her say shove it because you've tried to make names off of me. And now she's good enough that she's going to start kicking the asses of their prospects. That'd be fun and satisfying for me. And I would be a huge fan, and getting to see her pull up a back-to-back upset. No love, no respect coming off the biggest upset of 2020. She's a big underdog again. And I'm pulling for Dobson here.
Same here. But like I said, I got to pick O'Neal just based off you can see what the UFC is doing here, right?
Writing is on the wall.
Yeah, for sure.